Books of the Bible, books of the Bible, books of the Bible, let the true light shine.
God's promise to Abraham. Hagar. 3 strangers, Genesis chapter 15, 16, and 18.
God spoke to Abram in a vision, "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward." Abram protested, "Sovereign Lord, you have not given me any children, and the person who will inherit all I have is my servant, Eliezer of Damascus. Eliezer not inherit, but a son of yours will," God replied. God took Abram out to look at the night sky. "Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. Your offspring will be as numerous as the stars." For Abram believed what God told him. God declared, "I am the Lord, who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land." "Sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain this land?" Abram asked. God told him to bring a heifer, a goat and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. Abram obeyed and sacrificed the animals, cutting all but the birds in half. He laid their carcasses, arranged in the halves, opposite each other. Birds of prey came down, but Abram drove them away. As the sun set, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a dreadful darkness came over him. God warned that Abram's descendants would be mistreated as slaves in a strange country for 400 years. The God explained he would punish the nation that made them slaves, and deliver them. They would leave that land with great possessions to live in the land God had promised. God promised Abram he would live in peace to an old age. When the sun had set, a smoking firepot with a blazing torch appeared and passed between the carcasses Abram had laid on the ground. God promised Abram to give his descendants the land from the Wadi of Egypt to the river Euphrates. However, Abraham and his wife Sarai became older and older without having a family of their own. The son God promised did not arrive, and Sarai became too old to have children. Would God keep his promise? How would Abram have descendants? God had promised Abram that he would be the father of a great nation. Sarai had an Egyptian servant called Hagar. She took her to Abram and said, "I have not borne children, but I am giving you Hagar so you can have a child with her." Abram and Hagar conceived a child together. Once she was pregnant, Hagar despised Sarai, who in turn mistreated her. Life for Hagar was so miserable that she ran away into the desert. Alone and helpless, she stopped at a spring to rest and drink. An angel of the Lord found her there. "Hagar, where have you come from, and where are you going?" the angel asked. "I'm running away from my mistress Sarai," she answered. "Go back to Sarai and do what she asks you to do," the angel told her. "You will give birth to a son, and you are to call him Ishmael, meaning God hears. The Lord has heard of your misery. Your descendants will be too numerous to count." Hagar obeyed, and when the child was born, he was named Ishmael. She never forgot how God had come to her rescue and announced, "You are the God who sees me." Abram was 86 years old when Hagar gave birth to Ishmael. However, God had promised that Abram and Sarai would have a child. It seemed impossible that this could happen. But nothing is impossible for God. Genesis chapter 18. Abram and the 3 strangers. Abram was given the name Abraham by God, meaning he would be the father of many nations. From this point he is given his full name. God also gave his wife Sarai the name Sarah, promising she would have a son even though she was 90 years old. While Abraham was sitting near the entrance to his tent near the great tree at Mamre, he looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. The Bible says one of these was the Lord. Abraham bowed down and said, "Let me bring you water to wash your feet and then rest here while I bring you food. When you are refreshed, you can then go on your way." Abraham rushed to ask Sarah to bake fresh bread. He chose a choice calf and gave it to a servant to slaughter and cook the meat. Then he poured his fresh milk and curds and served it to his guests. "Where is your wife Sarah?" they asked him. "In the tent," Abraham replied. Then one of them announced, "I will return around this time next year, and Sarah your wife will have a son." Sarah was listening near the entrance of the tent. She laughed to herself as she thought, "I am too old to have children, and so is Abraham." The Lord asked Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Will I really have a child now that I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord?' I will return at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah was afraid, so she lied and said, "I did not laugh." But the Lord replied, "Yes, you did laugh. The men got up to leave, and Abraham walked along with them to see them on their way. The Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? Abraham's descendants will become a great and powerful nation, and all nations on earth will be blessed through him. I have chosen him, and the Lord will bring about all he has promised to Abraham." The men looked down towards the city of Sodom. The Lord said, "The people in Sodom and Gomorrah have been very disobedient. I will go down and see how bad they have become." Two of the men started walking towards Sodom. Abraham was concerned as he knew his nephew Lot and his families were living in Sodom. Abraham remained standing with the Lord. Abraham pleaded, "Will you sweep away those who live right along with those who have done such wrong? If there are 50 righteous people in the city, will you not spare it? Will not the judge of all the earth do what is right?" The Lord replied, "If I find 50 people doing what is right in the city, I will spare the whole place for their sake." Abraham spoke again, "Now that I have been so bold as to speak to the Lord, although I am but dust and ashes, will you destroy the city if there are 45 righteous people in it? If I only find 45 people doing what is right," the Lord answered, "I will not destroy the city. What if there are just 40 righteous people?" Abraham asked. The Lord replied, "For the sake of 40 people I will not destroy the city." "Please don't be angry and let me speak," Abraham pleaded. "What if only 30 good people can be found?" "I will not destroy the city if there are 30 righteous people in it," the Lord replied. "Now that I have been so bold to speak to the Lord," Abraham continued, "what if only 20 can be found? For the sake of 20 I will not destroy it," the Lord answered. "Don't be angry, but let me speak once more," Abraham begged. "What if there are only 10 righteous people in the city? For the sake of 10 I will not destroy the city," the Lord promised. The Lord then left, and Abraham returned to his tent.
What is your answer? 1. What is the God's promise to Abraham? 2. Who is Hagar? 3. Who are those 3 strangers?